My phone rang at 11:04 p.m., and it was my daughter's voice, high and fast and cracking, saying, "Dad, there's a car. It's been behind me for 10 miles. I think it's trying to run me off the road." And 40 minutes later, I was standing on the shoulder of Route 40 with a dislocated finger, a busted taillight in my hand as evidence, and 2 men face down in the gravel who had picked the single worst family in this county to try that with. Name's Walt Briggs, 68 years old, a hip that clicks when it rains, a wife named Doris who has heard me tell this story exactly 11 times now and still gasps in all the same places, and 29 years as a sheriff's deputy in this county before I turned in my badge for a fishing rod and a slower kind of life. I want you to hold on to that fact, 29 years, because it matters in about 6 minutes, same as everything else I'm fixin' to tell you. My daughter, Megan, is 34, sharp as a tack, an accountant by trade, the kind of quiet, steady kid who never gave Doris and me one gray hair through her whole growing up, unlike her brother, who gave us most of the gray hairs we've got between the two of us combined. Megan works for a mid-sized logistics company 2 towns over, keeping their books straight. And about 6 weeks before that phone call, she came to Doris and me for Sunday dinner looking like she hadn't slept right in a month. "Something's wrong with the numbers," she told us, pushing green beans around her plate instead of eating them. "Has been for a while. I finally figured out what, and I don't like what it means." "Slow down and tell me exactly where you are," I said, already moving for my truck keys, Doris sitting up in bed behind me with the particular alertness of a woman who spent 40 years learning to read my voice the way I'd just learned to read Megan's. "Route 40, past the old mill, maybe 2 miles from the county line. Dad, he's right on my bumper. I don't know what he wants. I tried to slow down and let him pass, and he stayed right there." "Don't slow down. Do not stop your car for anything. What's the vehicle?" "Black SUV, tinted windows. I can't see who's—" "Dad, he just hit me. He clipped my back bumper. I'm fighting the wheel." I have heard a lot of frightened voices over 29 years wearing a badge. Hearing that particular fear in my own daughter's voice did something to my chest I am not going to try to describe to you, because there aren't words for it that do it justice, and any man who's ever gotten a call like that already knows exactly what I mean without me spelling it out. "Megan, listen to me. I was already in the truck, engine turning over, gravel spitting out from under my tires before Doris had even gotten her robe on. You keep both hands on that wheel, and you do not let him force you to stop. I am coming right now. Talk to me. Keep talking." Dad, he's pulling up alongside me now. I can't see him. The windows are black. He's trying to push me toward the shoulder." I know Route 40 the way I know my own hands. 29 years of driving every mile of that county at every hour of the night will do that to a man. And I knew exactly one thing in that moment that gave me an edge nobody chasing my daughter could possibly have. There's a service road behind the old grain elevator that cuts nearly 4 miles off the route from my house to that stretch of highway. Unmarked, unpaved the last quarter mile, the kind of shortcut only a man who spent 3 decades patrolling these roads at 2 a.m. would ever think to use. I took it doing 60 on a road built for 25, my old truck bouncing hard enough over the ruts that I bit clean through my own lip and didn't feel it happen until later. "Talk to me, Megan." "He hit me again. Dad, I'm losing the shoulder. There's a ditch. I can't—" Brake steady, don't jerk the wheel. Brake steady and aim for the flattest part of that ditch if he pushes you off. Do you hear me? A controlled slide beats a rollover every single time. I hear you. The line went to a scream and then to nothing but road noise. Phone dropped somewhere in the footwell of her car. And I want to tell you honestly, those next 90 seconds without her voice in my ear were the longest 90 seconds of my entire life. Longer than any of the 4 decades that came before them. I came off that service road doing 70. Back tires fighting for grip on the transition from dirt to pavement, and I caught sight of taillights ahead in the dark. One set weaving hard, one set locked in tight behind it, like a predator that had already decided how this was going to end. I did not have a badge anymore. I want to say that plainly because it changes exactly nothing about what I did next. I had my truck, my headlights, and 29 years of knowing precisely how to use both of those things against a man who thinks he owns the road because he's the one doing the chasing. I came up behind that SUV fast, high beams on, laid on my horn long and hard, the oldest trick in the book, but one that works because it forces a driver's attention to split for half a second between the thing he's chasing and the thing suddenly bearing down on him from behind. And a driver's attention split at speed is a driver about to make a mistake. He made his. He swerved half a lane checking his mirror, and that gave Megan just enough daylight to correct hard right and pull her car back fully onto the pavement, gaining maybe 30 yards on him in the process, 30 yards that meant everything. "Megan, this is Dad. I'm right behind him now. Keep driving. Do not stop. There's an exit 2 miles up. Take it. I've got him." I do not know if she heard any of that. Her phone was still in the footwell as far as I knew. What I did know was that I was not letting that SUV get back within striking distance of my daughter's bumper, not for one more second, not while I still had a truck under me and both hands on a wheel. I pulled out into the oncoming lane, empty at that hour, thank God for small mercies, and came up alongside that SUV instead of behind it. And I want to tell you, 68 years old, hip clicking, heart going like a jackhammer, I felt something in me come roaring back to life that I had not felt in 8 years of retirement, something that had gone quiet, not gone. The passenger window of that SUV came down. A man leaned out with something in his hand, and I did not wait to find out what kind of something. I cut my wheel hard left into his lane, forcing his own driver to choose between colliding with me or backing off, and he backed off, tires screaming, dropping back a full car length in the half second it took him to decide staying alive mattered more than finishing the job. That was the gap I needed. I dropped back behind him now, deliberately, put my truck's nose an inch off his rear bumper the exact way I'd been trained to do it decades earlier for exactly one purpose. And I want you to understand, this maneuver is not something you do carelessly. It will break your own front end as easy as it breaks the car in front of you. But a pit maneuver executed right, at the right speed, on the right angle, will turn a fleeing vehicle sideways faster than any amount of braking ever could. I hit his rear quarter panel at 45 miles an hour. His SUV spun a hard quarter turn, tires shrieking, and slid off the shoulder into the soft dirt beyond it, plowing to a stop at an angle. Dust and gravel still hanging in my own headlights as I brought my truck around behind it, my whole front end crumpled and steaming, but still running, still moving, still exactly what I needed it to be. I was out of that truck before it had finished rocking on its own suspension. The driver's door of that SUV came open, and a man half fell out of it, disoriented, and I hit him before he'd fully found his feet. both of us going down hard into the dirt, my dislocated finger happening somewhere in that first exchange, though I did not feel it until much later, adrenaline being the strange, merciful thing it is. He got one good shot into my ribs that I will feel for a month, and I gave him 3 back that put him flat and staying that way. The passenger came around the back of that SUV at me next, the same one who'd leaned out the window minutes before, and this is where 29 years of training either holds up or it doesn't, and I want to tell you it held up. I stripped whatever was in his hand, a tire iron as it turned out, poetic in a way I didn't have time to appreciate right then, before he ever got a swing off, and I put him on the ground beside his partner with considerably less patience than I generally show men half my age. Headlights swung in behind us. Megan had turned that exit around, come back, and I want to tell you the sight of my daughter half running, half stumbling out of her own car toward me, alive, shaken but whole, is a sight I will carry with me to my own grave, longer and clearer than the fight itself, longer than the pain in my ribs or the finger I'd have to have a doctor reset before sunrise. "Dad," she got to me and just held on, both of us standing in the dark on that shoulder, shaking in a way neither one of us was in any hurry to stop doing. "I'm here," I told her. "I'm here. You're all right. It's over." State troopers arrived within 11 minutes, and I want to tell you that 11 minutes felt like nothing at all compared to what had come before it, standing there with Megan wrapped in my coat, while 2 men who'd tried to run my daughter off a highway sat zip-tied in the dirt with a busted taillight lens I'd pried off their SUV sitting on my own truck's hood as evidence I intended to hand over personally. Here is the part of this story that took another 3 weeks to fully surface, same as it always seems to with stories like this one. Both men worked, it turned out, for a private security contractor Preston Cole's company had quietly retained the month before, officially for corporate risk consulting, and detectives found text messages on both their phones referencing Megan by name, her testimony time the next morning, and instructions that used the phrase "make sure she's late" in a way that a grand jury did not have any trouble at all interpreting correctly given the context of a highway chase and an attempted forced stop at 11 at night. Preston Cole was arrested 9 days later, not just on the original embezzlement charges Megan had uncovered, but on witness tampering and conspiracy charges that added considerably more years to whatever sentence he's eventually looking at. I understand from the detective who caught the case, a sharp young woman named Detective Ruiz, who reminded me a great deal of myself at half my current age, that Cole's own attorney is reportedly furious with him for authorizing something as reckless as what happened on Route 40 that night, evidence being a great deal harder to make disappear than a set of quarterly numbers, especially evidence that includes a dislocated finger, a busted taillight, and one retired deputy who happened to still remember exactly how to execute a maneuver he'd been trained on 3 decades earlier and never once expected to need again. Megan gave her sworn statement the next morning anyway, 4 hours late, bruised and exhausted and magnificent, sitting across from an assistant attorney general with her chin up the entire time, and I sat in the hallway outside that office the whole time she was in there, same as I once sat in 100 hallways outside 100 interview rooms over the course of my own career, except this time it was my own girl's voice I was straining to hear through a closed door, and I have never in my life been prouder of anybody than I was listening to that particular silence. Doris did not sleep for 2 full nights after that phone call woke her up, and she has made it clear to me in the weeks since that my truck driving days on unpaved service roads at 60 miles an hour are, in her words, officially retired alongside the badge, and I have agreed to that condition the same way I have agreed to most of her conditions over 42 years of marriage, which is to say, I nodded seriously and privately reserved the right to reconsider if circumstances ever demanded it again. Megan still works in this county, still keeps books straight for a living, now for a company with considerably more honest leadership than her last one. She drives Route 40 most days on her commute, same as she always did, and I know because she told me herself that the first week back she had to pull over twice just to get her hands to stop shaking before she could keep driving. She didn't stop driving it, though. That's my girl, scared and steady at the same time, same as her old man turned out to be, same as I hope she carries with her the rest of her life, long after mine is done. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this. 29 years I spent trained for exactly one kind of night, and I told myself, walking away from that badge, that those years were behind me for good. I was wrong, and I am grateful every single day that I was wrong, because whatever you spent a career learning does not leave you just because you handed in the uniform. It goes quiet, it waits, and if the night ever comes when your own child's voice is shaking on the other end of a phone line, I promise you, whatever you know how to do will still be in there, waiting on you to remember it, ready to move before your own fear has finished catching up to what your hands already know.